I wanted to welcome everyone today in this third day of App Growth Week. I'm really glad that I'm able to speak in front of you today, and I hope you will enjoy this session. And during the next 25 minutes, I'll be talking a bit about A/B testing for ASO, some of the best practices, as well as slightly more advanced strategies that I use in my daily job. And I hope this is gonna be like a very educative, nice session for you, which you'll find handy. And yeah, without further ado, let's begin. Very briefly, who am I? So I'm working currently as a marketing manager and ASO lead at Klarna. I used to work at Feature as an ASO consultant, as well as at Ladder as a growth marketer. Both of these are mobile growth agencies. And you might potentially also know me from some of my pieces that I wrote on A/B testing, mostly for ASO, and I share them on my Medium site as well on ASO Stack on Feature blog. And today I'm gonna focus on a few main points. I guess there are 5 main points that I wanted to touch today. The first one is a bit of statistic bubble, but I hope that I will make it clear, to the point, and easily understandable. And if you got a chance to listen to my last speech during the ASO conference in June, I was talking a lot then about Frequentist method on which Play Store testing is based. And I'm really glad that today I have this opportunity to kind of naturally carry on and focus on Bayesian statistics, which is leveraged by product page optimization used by Apple. But not only, as you will also learn a bit later. And I will just show you today what are the main differences, why you should care about it, and why generally it's good to know, at least in a very general manner, what it's about. And for example, maybe you will be able to make more informed decision about which method to choose if you got such opportunity. Then I would also like to show you the testing loop that we use at Klarna, which I often leverage to stress how important it is not to skip the research phase while you are optimizing something, while you simply plan the optimization process for your app. Later on, we will move to heuristic analysis framework, which might sound a bit naughty, but in fact, it's a very straightforward framework which helps you to figure out what to test, for example, when you run out of ideas. And I know there are a ton of apps that use this framework with success, and it helps them simply guide their experimentation backlog. Moving on, we will go to prioritization model, which is again one of the best practices that I wanted to share with you today. And it's a great, easy tool which helps organize the experiments backlog and just structure it all in a more deliberate manner. And last but not least, I will touch segmentation, which is something like a small growth hack that I use in my daily job. And it's a tool that I use, like a hack, to cope with the insignificant test results that I guess all of us are getting. And I believe this is probably one of the best way to cope with insignificant results, especially that's something what affects bigger apps when you got like a big brand name. I think it's something which is a very common challenge. So we will also talk about it later today. And starting with, as I mentioned, a bit of statistical bubble, I would like today to show and stress the differences between both of these approaches. And if this doesn't sound to you familiar at all, I would like to just say that this will all be in a very simple way put on right now. And I hope it will be all clear. If not, feel free to just make questions in the chat and I will take them all either as I'm speaking or at the end of my speech. So first, we got the Frequentist approach, Frequentist statistics, on which Play Store experiments are based. And we also got the second approach, which is called Bayesian statistics. And this is the one which is leveraged by Apple and by SplitMetrics as well, if you use the SplitMetrics Optimize. And Apple uses it, of course, for the product page optimization. And what I wanted to show you today are like a few main areas, and I would like to compare those two approaches right now. So when it comes to Frequentist, it's considered as a bit less intuitive than Bayesian, as it bases on a p-value, and it's not that easily understandable term. If you follow some of my articles, I wrote a few articles, which were like a few 100,000 words, some of them, just to explain how the p-value works and how to make sure that your experiments on Play Store are valid, right? And on the other hand, we got Bayesian statistics, this new approach, which is much more intuitive as we directly calculate the probability of our variant A being better than B. And if you run some tests either in SplitMetrics Optimize or in product page optimization, you could potentially see there that they are simply saying that there is, let's say, 75% chance that your variant performs better than the current default, right? And it's much more intuitive than the p-value and trying to understand what it actually means. Moving on, we got sample size. And sample size, again, is something on which I focused a lot during my last speech, as well as during the articles that I wrote. And it needs to be predefined. And it's something that not everyone knows, not everyone is aware of. And Play Store also directly doesn't mention that, right? So it's important to know that you need to calculate your sample size in advance. You have to check if your variants reach the sample size to make sure that your experiment is statistically valid. And Bayesian here comes with a more simplified approach. There is no need to specify sample size, although I have to mention that there are scientists which argue about this point. So my rule, my recommendation here is that even though it's generally believed that you don't need to predefine the sample size, I always run my tests for like a full business cycle. In my case, that's just full 7 days to cover for weekly seasonalities and changes in user behavior. And I also never make any decision based on experiments which gathered less than 250 conversions per variant. So that's like my golden rule, but you can, of course, try to adapt it to your needs. Then we got quick to make decisions. And Frequentist approach is less quicker, if I can say that, as it has more restrictive assumptions on distributions. And simply it's more advanced when it comes to the statistics model behind, while Bayesian, again, has got less restrictive assumptions, and we can make the decisions much quicker. There are some scientists which are saying that Bayesian, in certain conditions, can require 75% less data to reach the sample size and to provide statistically significant data than the Frequentist approach. Moving on, we got represented uncertainty. And with Frequentist, we are using confidence interval, right? We can right now specify what kind of percentage we want our confidence interval to be based on. And it's, again, convoluted and often misunderstood term. While on the other hand, on Bayesian, we got highest posterior density region. And potentially, initially, it may sound to you as a more difficult one, but in fact, it's just the expected conversion rate that you get from your variant. So it's much easier, much more digestible. And it doesn't require that much of homework in advance to understand what it actually means. And last but not least, declaring a winner. So here, again, we have to remember that we need to always validate whether the sample size is reached and also if the p-value is below a certain threshold, right? The p-value usually is automated by the tool, meaning that the tool tells you that your variant performs better than the other or worse, or there's not enough data, which means that the p-value is not below the certain threshold, but still you have to calculate the sample size on your own. And with Bayesian, we either got the probability to be best, which goes above a threshold that we set up for ourselves before, or we got the expected loss, again, which is a very simple, easy term, and we set a threshold below which we don't want this term to go. Yeah, moving on. Yeah, here's like a source that I based it on. It's not that I just come up with this on my own. I, of course, use other information, and I encourage you, if you want to learn more, here is a great resource that you can base and read much more on those two approaches. Now, let's go to a bit more practical side of ASO. There's no more statistical bubble. And I wanted to show you, as I mentioned at the very beginning, the testing loop that we leverage at Klarna. And what I like specifically about this testing loop is that it stresses out one thing. That one thing is that research is an inseparable element of your testing. And as you can see on the left side, we've got different elements that I highlighted, which I believe are the most important. But of course, you don't necessarily have to agree with me, and you can choose your own. But these are like the most universal ones, right? So we start with market intelligence. We got heuristic assessment, about which I'll be talking just in a moment. We got other channel findings. And here I mean things such as learnings from performance marketing, CRM, from email newsletter. Everything what comes to your mind can fuel your research process while designing tests for ASO. We also got one of the most important elements, which are qualitative insights, right? So the ones which we gather through user research, through interviews, from observing how users interact in our app. This is super important element on which our testing should be based in the first step from my point of view. And last but not least, we also got past experiments learnings, which are, again, really important. It doesn't make sense at all just to make experiments and do not track what's the outcome of them, because we just waste time potentially in the future redoing the same experiments, which on and on are just confirming the same hypothesis that we wanted to confirm. And on the right side, you got testing. And testing consists here of the 5 steps. So we got hypothesizing, prioritization, designing, running tests, and at the end, cross-checking the results, validating them, right? As no matter how great your testing tool is, you should always remember to cross-check the results. And now moving on to the heuristic store listing analysis framework. Maybe the name is not the most sexy one, but I'm promising you that it's really easy, straightforward tool to use. And it bases on a well-established rules and experiences from the colleagues and teams working behind conversion optimization for websites over years. So on the left side, you can see the pyramid, which is the analogy to Maslow's pyramid of needs. And we should start looking at it from the very bottom, right? So all of our optimizations should start with store guidelines and policies. And what I mean by that is that we simply fulfill all of these and we make sure that we won't be rejected and that our idea for test won't be rejected at the very beginning before we even start to test it out. Then we got relevance, and it's actually relevance and clarity of our value proposition. It's a very important aspect to think of because users need to understand what's the main purpose of your app, right? What your app serves, what's the solution that it provides. And there's no point in thinking about other levels if the first one is not done properly. Then we got personalization, and it mostly includes things such as localization or culturalization. We also got trust and security, which is especially important in some industries, in some app categories, such as, let's say, financial apps or dating apps, where users want to make sure that their data is secure, it's safe, and that they can simply trust the app while downloading it, inputting their data, messaging inside, and so on. And lastly, we got stimulants, which is really important as well, but we should not try to overstimulate our users. But at the same time, we need to keep in mind that app stores and play stores are those places where users have a very short attention span, right? So we need to make sure that we do what we can best to grab their attention, to make them stop at the result that they see while they're scrolling the search results, and make sure that that will be something what they are looking for and will be relevant for them. So at the bottom, you can see here that I created a link to download this framework. You can make a copy. If you don't want to, you can also change some of the questions and just use it for your own needs, or you can add even some new layer of this pyramid on the left side. It's up to you, but it's like a great starting point. And I know that there are teams who are leveraging that in their daily job, and that simply treats them as an experiment backlog. Moving on, we got something which I often stress, and I want to stress it out again right now here, that you should always try to make your experiments bold. If you don't want to make your experiments bold every time, at least make it like a habit once per month, right? Because it's always better to have more differentiated variants than something which is only like a small aesthetic change. And you can see here the first app is Coinbase, second one is Spotify. So these are like very popular apps which can definitely they got a lot of hundreds or maybe even thousands of downloads every day. And even though they still go for very bold testing, right? And I know that there are a lot of people saying that you should only test one change at a time. And I'm not necessarily agreeing with that. Maybe you should test one change at a time. But what I mean by the change is that it's like a hypothesis, right? And you can make multiple aesthetic multiple aesthetic adjustments as long as they're in line with the hypothesis that you are trying to confirm, right? And then it makes much more sense. And you can still get very clear results and understand how it impacted your optimization process. Then how to prioritize your optimization backlog. So this is like a pyramid, again, analogy to Maslow's pyramid of needs. It starts from the very bottom. And as I mentioned before, qualitative insights should be at the very foundation of your whole testing process. I'm often saying that you should treat A/B testing as a quantitative way to validate your qualitative insights, right? So before you even start A/B testing, you do a bit of housework. You do some user research. you do some interviews, you go into the app, check the statistics, and based on that, you try to hypothesize and create new ideas for your A/B tests, right? And that's like a really great way to look at testing, which certainly will provide you with the best possible ideas, simply because it's based on real data and not just gut feelings and assumptions. We also got their ASO best practices in the second level, heuristic analysis findings, competitors inspire ideas, and at the very end, we've got blue sky thinking, what ifs, and creative adjustments. And it's important that, of course, you can sometimes mix some of these elements, but not to flip upside down this pyramid, right? And I see this happening on and on, that teams are simply starting from the creative adjustments while they get a ton of qualitative insights, which are just laying somewhere there and no one remembers about them. Please don't do it, guys. And now one more idea that I would like to share with you. I know that we all love to be really creative as marketers and are trying somehow to come up with something super innovative. But in fact, marketing is not an abstract field. It's with us for hundreds of years, and there's a lot which we can derive from in the books, in the internet, everywhere. So what I would like to encourage you guys to do is to just start using what's already there, right? So I have a place here, for example, the persuasion, emotion, trust model, which you can use when you are designing your experiments. You also got screenshots aggregators, such as the one that I'm showing just right here, to get inspired, right? You got a lot of case studies, Cialdini's principles on which the whole marketing is based. There is a lot of things that you can use, and you don't have to necessarily come up with something on your own from the very beginning. And one of the last points that I wanted to touch is to use calculators to better understand product page optimization results. And once you got the results from product page optimization, you can take those results and use third-party testing calculator to get better idea of what they mean. You can get much clearer idea on what it actually means and just understand it better. We can move to the next slide now. That's the last thing that I wanted to touch. So the inconclusiveness of results. And I know it's a very common challenge a lot of marketers face today. So there are different reasons for not achieving the conclusive results, right? And we first have to think about the actual reason underlying behind it. And the first one is that there's actually no impact on user behavior, because we might design something which doesn't impact the users. And it's also a good idea for us, good information for us. And it doesn't mean that this test is a waste of time. Second option is that our variants are not differentiated enough. So that's why I'm always saying that I'm inviting everyone, encouraging to make their design as differentiated as possible. And lastly, it's impossible to distinguish the difference in performance due to lack of segmentation. And the lack of segmentation is a very disturbing thing, which we got in both testing environments on App Store and Play Store, but it's something what we can overcome. And we can move now to the next slide. And you can make a segmentation with third-party testing tools such as SplitMetrics Optimize. It's amazing advanced feature that you can use, and it's not available, and I don't believe it will ever be available on App Store or Play Store in their native testing environments, although I believe it will be one day. And you can leverage that to simply focus on your most valuable audience, right? You can segment your audience by language, mobile device, campaign source, and so on. And make sure that the results that you are basing on are the users that you care about the most. It's a great way to get pass by inconclusive results that you might get on and on, even though your results are super diversified. And I strongly encourage you to test it out if you haven't done so. And I believe that's all from what I prepared for today. Thank you very much.
Great presentation, really, really good. Thank you so much for your time. And yes, have a great day. Happy Thursday. Appreciate you being here with us. Thank you very, very much.